I'm Jesse Ventura. Stay vigilant and question more.
Welcome to my world. Come along for the ride.
The world according to Jesse. Today, we discuss the wealth gap in America and how the pandemic has made the problem worse. I also sit down with a Ben & Jerry's co-founder to talk about corporate responsibility in shaping a better America. Sit tight, everyone. The show starts now. The world according to Jesse.
Hi, I'm Brigida Santos. For our top story today, all 50 states and the District of Columbia have formally certified their presidential election results, cementing Joe Biden's win as America's next president. The U.S. Supreme Court has also rejected Texas's bid to invalidate the results of the election in 4 swing states where Donald Trump lost: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. That lawsuit was spearheaded by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who accuses government officials in those states of unconstitutionally revising election statutes without legislative authority when updating mail-in ballot rules during the pandemic. SCOTUS has denied the motion, citing lack of standing under Article 3 of the Constitution, stating, quote, Texas hasn't demonstrated a judicially recognizable interest in the manner in which another state conducts its elections. It also says all other pending motions are dismissed as moot. Now, the Supreme Court's rejection here is widely seen as the final stop for those in the Republican Party seeking to overturn President-elect Joe Biden's win. Jesse, what do you think about all this?
Well, what I think about it is this. First of all, Texas, are you listening out there, Texas? Keep your nose out of other states' business. If we wanted Texas to govern us, me included, I would move to Texas. And what gets me is the Republicans are supposedly the party of states' rights. Where were states' rights in this lawsuit with Texas coming out and trying to dictate to the rest of the country how they should conduct their elections? This was utterly ridiculous. I'm so happy the Supreme Court, even with 3 Trump conservative Supreme Court members, kudos to them. They went and looked at the Constitution and they looked at the law, and they didn't make a political decision to benefit Donald Trump and the state of Texas, I guess.
And even after the Electoral College and Supreme Court have moved forward with Joe Biden, President Trump and his legal team are still pursuing election lawsuits. The latest was filed this week in New Mexico, where the president accuses the state of breaking the law when allowing voters to place absentee ballots in drop-off boxes rather than handing them directly to the location's presiding judge in person. Now, at this point, doesn't all this just seem a little bit performative? Because I don't know that they can actually get what they want at this point.
Well, I'll tell you what, you got to look at the Republicans as a whole. First of all, you got Trump, President Trump, who's trying to overturn an election, not even bothering with the Constitution. Then you got the Republican Party. Let's talk about them. They only want white voters. Let me repeat that. Republicans only want white people earning money voting. And it's clear because every time they try to disenfranchise people, look at where they do it. They go down into the city center. They go down into populations with heavy amount of people of color. You don't ever see the Republican Party looking at disenfranchising suburban voters, do you? You don't look at them disenfranchising rural voters where Republicans are very, very strong. They only want to disenfranchise people of color or poor people. If you don't have money, you shouldn't vote according to Republicans. And if you're a person of color, you probably shouldn't be allowed to vote either. I know those are both radical things to say, but look at the Republicans' record on it. It speaks for itself.
Let's turn to the economy. The pandemic has widened the wealth gap in America even further than it already was. Now, as millions of hungry citizens line up at food banks across the country, billionaires are cashing in. An analysis of Forbes financial data reveals that the net wealth of the richest 651 American billionaires has increased by over $1 trillion since this March, when mandatory shutdown orders went into effect to curb the spread of COVID-19. A large part of this has to do with the fact that these people are the CEOs of major companies that have been able to remain operational, while many smaller businesses have been forced to temporarily cease operations due to those mandatory shutdown orders. Now, larger companies often offer essential services and goods like Amazon, Walmart, and Target, so they can stay open. Or they have businesses that allow workers to perform their daily tasks from home or other remote locations. Because of this, Wall Street investments in these companies are up, and billionaires tied to them accumulate more wealth. Jesse, no surprise here.
Well, first of all, let's look at our illustrious Congress for a moment. You know, they had no problem passing the defense bill, did they? You know, to protect our country from the wars they fight in other lands and all this. No problem. Bipartisan support. Boy, they shot that defense bill right through, rubber stamped it, probably gave them more money than they even asked for. I wouldn't doubt it. I'd have to check on it. But now let's look at the second war being fought, the war against the pandemic. Because right now, this pandemic has killed more people than Vietnam, Korea, probably World War II. I don't know if we've reached that magnitude yet.
It has.
But we
just reached that level.
We just made it. So more people have died from this pandemic than died in World War II. Yet our Congress has no problem funding wars like that. But a war against a pandemic? Oh, they can't agree on nothing. They sit and fight and bicker and moan and groan on it. You can bet if the military-industrial complex were behind the war against the pandemic, you would see them come up with support from both parties immediately, and it would pass right through. But it doesn't, because it's a war they don't want to fight, and it's a war that doesn't pay them money back right now the way the industrial war machine can.
We've never seen concentrated levels of wealth at this magnitude before. Now, at $4 trillion, the total wealth of all billionaires in the U.S. is now nearly double the wealth held by the poorest half of the population. The wealth of the 651 billionaires is so high that they could give a $3,000 stimulus check to every person in the country and still be richer than they were at the start of the pandemic. But of course, that's not how it works. Instead, taxpayers pay into the system in hopes that the government will bail them out with their own money in times of crisis like this. The government, though, prioritizes bailing out major industries and companies via corporate welfare. Many of the individuals who benefit the most from this system turn around and secretly evade taxes by hiding money offshore. Corporations also dodge taxes abroad with corporate loopholes, foreign subsidiaries, and tax havens, while those on Main Street struggle to earn a living wage and try to make a one-time $1,200 stimulus check stretch across 9 months. Jesse, why does the government always intervene on behalf of rich companies and billionaires rather than everybody else? When is this going to backfire on Congress?
Well, because that's who they cater to. That's who runs our government. Big corporations and billionaires. What did you say earlier, Brigitte? There are 651 billionaires now in the United States. Is that the correct figure? 600?
Well, I believe that's the right number.
Okay, well, it's close enough. Let me make this statement. There shouldn't be one billionaire. There should not be one person worth $1 billion. And I know that's shocking hearing it come from me. But the older I get, the more flaws I see in capitalism and the more good things sometimes I see in more socialism. And let me explain on this. What can one do to earn $1 billion? I had at one time what I considered the toughest job I've ever did in my life. I was right out of high school. I had a job with the Minnesota State Highway Department bridge crew, and my job was running the 90-pound jackhammer. You know, all day long on the street. That is the hardest job on the planet. You find me one that's physically or mentally tougher, and I was barely making above minimum wage. And you're telling me that these billionaires who are now doubling their money, doubling their wealth, that they work harder physically than someone spending 8 to 10 hours a day on a jackhammer? Bull crap is what I got to say to that. They earn their money by pushing pencils, and they don't even need to use deodorant because none of them ever sweat, I doubt it, at work. There should not be a billionaire, and I'm going on record to state this. Everybody talks about a minimum wage, a minimum wage, a minimum wage. I say it's time for a maximum wage. How about 12 million a year, $1 million a month? If you can't live on $12 million a year, $1 million a month, maybe we should bring back capital punishment. Well, they already have, haven't they? Yeah, that's right. The feds are already doing it. We could lengthen the list.
Many workers at the largest corporations in the U.S. depend on federal benefits to survive. Walmart and McDonald's employ the most workers whose incomes are subsidized by taxpayers. This was the case prior to the pandemic, and it's only gotten worse. Other major companies with employees who rely on food stamps and Medicare to get by include Amazon, Target, Uber, FedEx, Home Depot, Lowe's, and many of the nation's largest fast food chains. Now, all the companies I just mentioned are considered essential services during the pandemic and therefore have remained open. While the CEOs get rich, the other jobs at these companies often pay so little that workers' paychecks don't cover basic necessities. Wages haven't kept up with growth in productivity and corporate profits for decades. In fact, wages for lower and middle income earners have been flat since the 1970s. The fight for a $15 per hour minimum wage is ongoing in 2020, but do you think that's even enough?
I don't know if it is enough or not, but here's what they ought to be doing. Any one of those companies that you listed, Walmart down the line, that all have billionaire owners, they should pass a law that nobody that works for that company is eligible for any type of government relief. They should not be having to get in line and having us taxpayers foot the bill while they're working a 40-hour week for Walmart. How much is the Walton family making? Yeah, we're back to that old billion-dollar stuff again. They're working so hard, they ought to make over $1 billion a year, while their very employees have to go on government subsidies, and we and our tax dollars have to bail them out. You don't even have to say what's wrong with this picture. It makes you want to puke. It makes you want to throw up. I say let's take the billionaires and give them some manual labor and see what they can actually do at working at a physical job.
It's time for a break. When we return, Jesse sits down with Ben of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream to talk about corporate responsibility. We'll be right back.
The world according to Jesse.
It's my pleasure to welcome Ben Cohen, the co-founder of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream, and soon to launch Eisenhower Media Network. He joins me now to discuss his involvement in social justice issues, including the movement to free Julian Assange. Ben, first of all, I got to tell you this. You produce a product that I take with double jeopardy. I love ice cream, but I'll tell you what, when I eat it, I have to work out twice as hard to keep my six-pack. Because ice cream puts more weight on me than anything else in the world, and it's because it's so damn good. Anyway, having said that, I'll ask about why has Ben & Jerry's been so successful? You say it's because of three things: high-quality ice cream, great ingredients with unusual flavors, and the social activist mission of the company. That last reason is pretty rare. What kind of activism does Ben & Jerry's engage in, and why do you think it's important?
Well, in general, the activism we engage in is about justice. Why do I think it's important? Because I believe in justice. Probably you believe in justice. Most people do. But despite the fact that it's supposed to be a fair and equal society, a lot of people are getting screwed. So Ben and Jerry's has come out supporting shifting money out of nuclear weapons into education. We've come out supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. Uh, we've come out supporting, reducing the gap between the rich and the poor. A bunch of stuff like that, which is what I understood is the American way, and the American people seem to like it.
Now, you live in the state of Vermont and are a longtime friend of Senator Bernie Sanders. You even co-chaired his 2020 presidential campaign. What was that experience like?
Well, it was incredibly exhilarating. It was incredibly hopeful. Uh, finally, a presidential candidate who is talking about the real issues, who is saying that our country has a responsibility to provide health care for everybody who lives here, uh, who's saying that we should be providing college at no additional cost to people so that people from all economic strata can get into college. Uh, it felt great to be campaigning for things I believe in and for a presidential candidate who is totally devoted to equality.
Now, do corporations shy away from making political statements or engaging in activism because they fear cancel culture? Have you ever experienced any ice cream boycott or anything similar to that by positions you've taken?
Well, there's really no sense taking a stand unless it is controversial. I mean, if it weren't controversial, you wouldn't need to take the stand. So yeah, we tend on stuff and we get pushback from people who don't agree, and that's fine. There have been threats to boycott because of one stand or another, but the reality is that the more stands we've taken, the more ice cream we've sold.
Very good. Now, you're personally involved in the Free Julian Assange movement. When did you get involved and what led you to care about his trial?
Well, I think that Julian Assange is really a hero for exposing things that our government is doing in our name and with our money, but that the government doesn't want us to know about. Um, and I had an opportunity to visit Assange. Was in the Ecuadorian embassy. Uh, I thought he was seeking asylum there. They were protecting him, and I thought it was going to be like a half-hour meeting or so, but it turned into 3 hours. And the guy is compassionate, caring, really smart, and he has the courage of his convictions. And his conviction is that people should know what their governments are doing. And essentially, he's a publisher, no different than a newspaper publisher. And newspapers are always publishing based on leaks. And so he published war crimes that people in the military were committing in our name. And I think that's a heroic thing to do. And he did it at extreme risk to his freedom. I mean, he's been cooped up for I don't know how many years now. And right now, because the U.S. is charging him with supposed crimes that carry 170 years in prison as the punishment, he's currently in a prison, maximum security prison, in solitary confinement in London, awaiting a extradition process. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he's a hero.
Now, this is kind of a piggyback on what you've said. Why should people care about this case and its implications? If they stick it to Assange, why should we care?
Freedom for Assange is freedom of the press. If they stick it to Assange, if they're successful in convicting Assange, then there's no limit to what the government can do to go after any publication, online, offline, newspaper, TV, who publishes truth that the government just doesn't want people to know about. I mean, we've got loads of media that are publishing lies, and the government doesn't seem to have a problem with them. But he was publishing the truth, and it's a pure case of kill the messenger. And it seems like what the government is doing is just trying to wait it out and kind of hope that he dies in prison, because he's got health problems, COVID's breaking out, and this guy did it for us. We need to do something for him.
What do you think awaits Assange? Is there any chance for a presidential pardon?
Well, I sure hope so. I guess it's a long shot, but there is a growing movement calling on Trump to pardon him, to drop the indictment. Actually, the Obama administration considered indicting Assange, and eventually they decided not to, because what they called the New York Times problem. That if they indicted Assange, they have to indict the New York Times too. So, and then when Trump came into office, I hear it had something to do with, being pushed by Pompeo. I mean, who knows? But when Trump came into office, he indicted him. And so now Edward Snowden has been tweeting about Trump pardoning him, and Oliver Stone and Pamela Anderson. So I'm hoping that Trump will see the light and do a good turn as he's going out the door. That's my hope.
Now, you're planning to launch the Eisenhower Media Network. What can you tell me about that?
Well, the Eisenhower Media Network is essentially a group of about 12 fairly high-level former officers in the armed services, and people that have been active in the intelligence and foreign services, and where they have a view that's contrary to what the Pentagon keeps on putting out. So we're trying to help make their voices heard, because the Pentagon keeps on engaging in these wars of choice, endless wars, killing people around the world, civilians, also in our name and in our money. And these are credible officers. Several of them have graduated from West Point or Annapolis, and they've been in Iraq and Afghanistan. They've seen what's going there, and they realize that it's senseless, it's pointless, and it just grinds on because there's a heck of a lot of people making a heck of a lot of money off war.
It goes right along with Smedley Butler's book, the two-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, War is a Racket. Anyway, a new Ben & Jerry's vegan flavor came out this month. Colin Kaepernick's Change the World. How did that collaboration come about, and what is the flavor raising money for?
Well, when Colin Kaepernick first took a knee during a football game, I was so overcome with appreciation for him taking a stand against continued police brutality toward black people, that I just on my own, overnighted him a bunch of ice cream and congratulated him on his or his kneel. That was, I mean, how many years ago was that? I don't know, but uh, you know, eventually, I'm kind of in the forefront. I'm the pointy edge of the spear. I'm the bleeding edge, and eventually the company came to see that, yeah, we ought to support Colin Kaepernick, and they started talking with them about a fur, and I believe that Kaepernick's royalty, this flavor, are going to a camp that he sponsors that's teaching teenagers what are their rights and how to deal with it when their rights are being taken away.
Very good. Ben Cohen, I want to say I appreciate your insight. Thank you for your time today. Please stay safe and keep up the good work. You put your money where your mouth is. Bless you for that, sir.
Jesse Ventura, keep on rocking, man.
The world according to Jesse.
Thanks for watching. Send us your comments on Facebook and Twitter for a chance to be featured next week. As always, we'll be back covering more stories ignored by the corporate media.
And remember, when the government lies, the truth becomes a traitor. Stay vigilant and wear your mask.
The world according to Jesse.